Got the true crime lighting going on. What do you guys think? Approve? So we're gonna get some people percolating in. Hopefully, those other guys are done with whatever they're doing. We'll probably have some people show up late. So good question. Tim Rathbone with the good question. Tim, the answer to your question, what is this all about, is mainly going to be about Nick Shirley and his mom, Brooke Shirley. We're going to be talking about the Dream Center, which is Colorado City, the building that Nick Shirley did his little thing about, did his little episode about, basically debunking Brielle Decker's work and the work of the good people who are trying to help Colorado City / Hilldale. Hold on, let me get the one. Helping people who are recovering from Warren Jeffs and the FLDS cult. They basically called it out. They were out there, Nick Shirley and Shane Baldwin, talking about how Warren Jeffs it basically was a cult leader who definitely deserved to go to prison. We're gonna go ahead and put comments up on the stage, you guys, so that everybody gets a chance to weigh in. Hop into the comments, say hello. This is gonna be a little bit hot. Okay, we're gonna be doing this hot and freaky and wild and etc. That sounds a lot sexier than it's gonna be. It's gonna be very unsexy. Sorry, unless you like watching your favorite cohort drink water. If that does it for you, the revolution will be hydrated. I'm going to start with an opening hymn because it is Wednesday service. Everybody stay with me. I'm going to get some of my notes together, and I'm going to come at you with a bunch of semi-organized updates on my research. Basically, right now, this whole Nick Shirley business has been falling apart for the past. It has been like falling apart, falling together, and we're figuring out more and more. We know now who David is. We now know what the story really is behind Minnesota fraud and daycare, how that's expanding now into more services. We now know of course, a lot, as you guys are surely aware, about how ICE presence in Minnesota has been ramped up now, is resulted in multiple people having been allegedly murdered by ICE. So it's all going to be very hot and heavy. So to get us kicked off while I get some of my notes together, here is our show opener for the week, giving a break to Charlatans Never Change and presenting a limited edition hymn, Get the Fuck Out. Except that we're in the opener now. So.
Get the fuck out of Minnesota. This is our home, not your war zone. Get the fuck out. Go play soldier on your own. We're not backing down. We're not letting go. You've been warned, it's Minnesota nights. We're murdered by police, we were murdered by ICE. Minneapolis lives on, we see through your mask. You brought your armor, but Minnesota last. Get the fuck out of Minnesota. This is our home, not your war zone. Get the fuck out, go play soldier on your own. We're not backing down. We're not letting go.
Woo woo! Nice, right? Okay, cool. Just getting some things set up for later this evening. I want to leave that mysterious. You probably guess. It's an interesting time. Southern Utah. So, a few announcements before we get into Nick Shirley and the crap going on with that. One is that I can now finally confirm I will be attending Thrive St. George next in February. at the end of the month. Those people who want to come out to Thrive, I highly recommend it. I've never been to one, but I understand they're great. I understand that from Renee Steelman of She Became Visible and several other people. I'll be going with my sister, chosen family, and also blood relative family, sister Nikki, who is a clergy member, a luminary for the Church of Korihor. And we will also be holding a special sacred event in which there will be live entertainment, my art, and the art of several of our donated art of several of our supporters and contributors. We will be holding a silent auction to benefit a charity based out of Colorado City that we went to visit with. And I'm going to show you some footage from that. As a matter of fact, yeah, we're going to show you very soon here. So, quick update. You know who Nick Shirley is. If you don't, here it goes. Remember that guy's up there in Minnesota bitching about daycare centers all being a fraud because he hates black people? Well, he doesn't say it that way, but that's what it is. He's a Mormon. His mom is a Mormon. She has her own channel, and basically they travel around the country doing anti-immigrant and racist content and selling it to news programs. And the Norman Mormon podcasters at Latter Daily Saints and Quick Media, also known as Greg Matson, Ward Radio, all these Mormon apologist YouTubers, they love it. They love this content. They love this guy. Love to promote to everybody. This guy is a returned missionary. Blah 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 blah. They leave out the white supremacy. Well, they leave out mentioning the white supremacy until they happen to mention, and everybody wants to call us Islamophobes. Everybody wants to call us racists and white supremacists, including Tim Walz. Okay, I just wanted to just disclaim here. Okay, we are not a political organization. We do not engage in any kind. The Church of Korihor does not engage in any kind of political organizing of any kind. I am not a fan of Tim Walz. I also am not a fan of any Republicans. And we're in talks in politics. All of this is just for news coverage purposes. And any clips presented, let's go ahead and put our banner up, are just for commentary purposes only. Oops, that's the wrong one. He's expressed those. Yeah, we'll start with this one. We'll move to the other one. So let's put up Nick Shirley because I want to show you something with Nick Shirley. Okay, so we're going to get into this here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that clip out. I'm going to go ahead and share you my screen. I want to show you, make sure I ain't got nothing pulled up. I don't need everybody to see. I don't claim to be any kind of saint. I ain't nobody's saint. Yeah. I'm going to show you guys my screen. Traditionally, I do this because it's easier and they don't, do it this way. Anyways, you don't care. All right, let's start with this right here. Okay, so this is Nick Shirley. If you were asking yourself, who is Nick Shirley? This is Nick Shirley. This is the video he released today. And it starts with this definitely not sketchy looking. Stop. I definitely got to get YouTube Premium. You guys give to the Church of Korihor so your boy can get YouTube Premium. So you're about to watch Nick Shirley and his man David. Now you remember David from the other video that got like 100 million views after the vice president of the United States started tweeting out this Mormon's racist stuff, as well as Elon Musk. Who cares? And so we're going to show what they're doing now. And this is the follow-up video. So I exposed a couple weeks ago, some of you will remember, I exposed that this guy Nick Shirley is a liar. And he basically what he does is he goes around and finds opportunities to film something that fits a Republican Party agenda talking point and then calls it, oh, breaking news. And it turns out he's covering news that's 3-4 months old, 6 months old, or otherwise, and basically just skewing it to make anybody who looks different from him, anybody who doesn't look white, to look like they are, fill in the racist stereotype here. And that's basically the guy's whole grift. Yes, cares. Yes, he served in the Santiago mission. Who cares? I don't have any problem with him for those things, other than it shows up in his work, and that's all I'm going to say. I report, you decide. Here we go. So this is supposedly the follow up. This boy ain't seen a grift he ain't liked yet. You will see here in this video, in this shot, he is sitting next to David. Up until now, David has been identified only as David in all of Nick Shirley's work. I don't know why it's particularly that way in his work. In other places, we come to find out what the guy's actual name is. His name is David Hoch, Hoch. I believe that's how you spell it. I'm just going to preface this. Well, we're going to watch a little bit of it, and then you guys tell me if you guys. Then I'll catch you up. So let's watch a little bit. So they're talking now about supposedly this major bombshell update to their story about Minnesota daycare fraud.
I have a number of companies that are local here in the Twin Cities, and this is just a fraction of the companies that are out there. What I found was that the national average for a non-emergency medical transportation company is 20 vehicles per company. A lot of these companies, their address is an apartment, some are in a house, some are in a convenience store, some of them in a vacant building. There's no signage, there's nobody there.
And so why would there be?
Just to be clear, unless Minnesota is unlike any other state in the union, none of this so far is illegal.
Be such a need for all these transportation companies here inside of Minnesota?
So if you think of this transportation as the hub of the wheel, so childcare is a spoke, adult daycare is a spoke, autism is a spoke, the interpreter services, which we can get into, that's another spoke. It all ties back to transportation. Why? Because those meals someone had to deliver those meals. Someone has to deliver the kid to autism, or say they did. So it all revolves around the transportation. And so when you're looking at this, you say, okay, well, let's just be conservative. Let's go on the low side. Let's say there are only 800 Somali-owned non-emergency medical transportation companies in Minnesota. Well, again, the average is 20 vehicles per company. So that's 800 times 20. And the way these NEMT companies are paid is if they bring someone.
Okay, so just to clarify here before we go on to anything else in this series, okay? So basically what they're talking about is, once again, they're going after Somali immigrants. Again, there is Ilan Omar, is a representative from Minnesota. She is Somali by birth, I believe. And this is the real reason why they're coming after Somali-owned businesses, Somali immigrant-owned businesses that receive federal funding. Now, there is something to say for the fact that back in September of last year, okay, we are now January. So go back January, December. Well, let's count this one. January, December, November, October, September. Okay. Back in September, a Somali immigrant, apparently named Asha Hassan, did plead guilty to basically defrauding the government of some $16 million worth of money through an autism center that she ran, and at least one other business, I'm not sure, and apparently quite a few of them. In fact, I haven't been able to follow up on all the story yet because, again, I've been capturing a lot of information coming at me all at once. But I'm planning next week to get a better update, a more full update on this. But effectively, there are a lot of companies that are associated with this one individual, apparently, that were running a scheme where they were defrauding an organization, a government program called Feeding Families, I believe. And basically, since September of last year, Minnesota has been investigating massive amounts of fraud related to this government program and the persons involved in this massive government program who have been defrauding the taxpayer for millions and millions of dollars, if not upwards of billions of dollars. So that's as of September. This is now January. What is it that these guys are actually revealing to the world and going out there and saying, well, it takes, the traditional media isn't doing anything. They aren't covering any of this. It takes somebody like Nick Shirley, this intrepid young independent reporter who has no journalism degree. As a matter of fact, I don't know of his going to any college. I'm not saying that he didn't. I don't know if he was going to any college at all. And that it takes him going out there to report on this that the media isn't reporting on. The media has been reporting on this the entire time. Nothing that they are revealing now hasn't been known since September of last year or even earlier. Some of the schemes they've been reporting on where people have been allegedly defrauding the taxpayer of these these funds date back to 2014. So basically, they're just reporting what you never would have heard on the news if you don't watch the news, because in Minnesota, they've been reporting on this the entire time. So, all right, kid, in a moment here, we're going to get caught up with Nick, and I want to transfer over to Brooke. But I want to get you guys caught up here a little bit. So I said that this guy, David, whose real name is David Hoke, I didn't reveal that. I learned about that reading about it on the news. See how easy that is, Nick? See how easy that is? I read about it on the news. I believe it was an article by I wish I'd written that one down, but I can't give full credit for it. But in any event, I want to say it was in The Economist. I don't remember. But his name is David Hoke. I'm going to tell you why I am very much now going to talk a lot less about David Hoke. Because from the beginning, I said, this guy with the papers and all the printouts about the Somali-owned daycare centers, alleged, that I showed very plainly, these daycare centers are being written up for safety violations regarding the children going there and being inspected as recently as December. If there is fraud in the system, it would have to include that the very inspectors in charge, whose only job is to inspect these daycare centers and make sure that there are kids there and that those kids get access to medicine, to special interest areas, to an actual education, teachers who are qualified and who have been background checked. All of these violations that have been reported on these various centers involve children not being taken regularly to wash their hands, to children not having access to special interest areas, children's files not including inoculation. Why can't I say this word today? Vaccination records, so on and so forth. Okay, so all of them it cannot possibly be that all of these daycare centers are just filing from businesses with their home address and then calling it a daycare center, and it turns out it's not even a real daycare center. It doesn't even have real kids in it. If it turns out that these inspectors, who, by the way, it's specifically noted, they come to inspect without giving advance warning. So they're especially once they have a conditional license, or in other words, once you get into enough trouble, the government puts a license on your daycare center that you have to show prominently in an area where parents will see it when they come in, saying basically that you are under probation. If I may, I am not an attorney, and so I'm just summarizing this as best as I know how. Basically saying, hey, this daycare center could be shut down because they're in violation of the law. And so they put it up there saying, we're letting this place stay open because they've committed to make changes, and we need daycare centers for these kids. Whatever people may feel about Somali immigrants or any immigrants, part of the reason why government funding goes to daycare programs for children of Somali immigrants, as it does for anybody who needs that kind of resources and economic resources, because Somali people have children. And many of these people came to this country, can't find work, or they're having difficulty finding work, or certainly that they don't have daycare while they go out and work whatever jobs they can. And it's extremely expensive in Minneapolis. It's expensive in Minnesota to live, as it is pretty much everywhere else. Groceries are expensive. Nobody can mention that because Donald Trump doesn't approve of it. Housing is unheard of, untold expensive in this country, including in Minnesota. Nobody can mention that because Donald Trump doesn't approve it. Whatever. Vote for Donald Trump if you want. I don't organize. Can't hear. Who can't hear me? 10:13. That was 10 minutes ago. Nikki, can you still not hear me? Hey, guys, weigh in on the comments if you can hear me. Okay, good. Okay. Woof. Okay. Thank you. You freaked me out. Gosh, Nikki, come on. Anyway, so that's where we are. Okay. So this is the update. But here's the main issue. These guys keep coming back to try and beat this dead horse because they know that they get broad amplified sound on X/Twitter, in the MAGA-verse, anytime that they say anything that confirms the suspicions of people who are averse to immigration. I am not on two channels. Does somebody? I'm. Are you on with channels? Yeah, I'm on, and I should be coming through in stereo. Anybody not hear me out there? So yeah. So let me. Okay. So again, David. So this guy, David Hoke, basically is an opportunist, and the more I look into him, the more I feel bad for the guy. So I'm going to let up on him a little bit. Turns out what David Hoke really is a useful idiot. I hate to say it that way, but it's the truth. This guy is the definition of a useful idiot, which is to say he is out there doing the bidding of the Republican Party. I'm not saying this because I support the Democratic Party. I don't really at all support the Democratic Party. I vote the way that I vote. Most people know that I am a leftist. If I vote for any candidate, I'm likely to vote independent or Democrat, but not exclusively. And I don't expect anybody else, if they're associated with me or my organizations, to vote in any particular way. I support secularism. So, but I do want to show you what's been revealed now as being the truth on this. This guy David doesn't have any kind of special skills in doing any kind of research that anybody else doesn't have. He has a friend whose name is Joe Marble. Back in the 90s, he and Joe Marble got together on the steps of the Minnesota state capitol, and made a big hullabaloo about committing to keep the Minnesota Twins baseball team, if you don't know, in Minnesota, and getting a stadium built for the Minnesota Twins. They then went out and made a documentary, apparently, about them getting into a Volkswagen bus and traveling across the country, trying to promote to everybody in the country that the Minnesota Twins to leave Minnesota. And when I first read about it, I went, geez, I made such a big deal about this guy is some racist a-hole who just has some kind of agenda against immigrants. It turns out this guy just does anything he can to garner a little bit of clout anywhere he can, including, by the way, I won't show you. He apparently got not naked, but he got a sandwich board made that he could walk around Minneapolis in, that looks like he's naked, and like he was wearing, I think he was wearing shorts. Gosh, I hope he was wearing shorts. And he would walk around in Minneapolis wearing a sandwich board in which he was promoting himself in his campaign for governor. And he ran for governor, apparently, with a party he started that had a single cause to it. And that single cause, effectively, as I understand it, is that he wanted that if Indians could have gaming on their reservations in territory he considers to be part of Minnesota, then he feels that Minnesota Twins fans and other, Minnesota sporting fans should be able to have legalized gambling and sports betting. And he created basically a whole party and platform on if the Indians can do gambling on their in there and have casinos, we can have our own sports betting for other people. I mean, it isn't strictly racist, but it throws the vibes. In fact, I would go so far as to say the way that it appears is definitely racist. And that's going to lead us into some information here about Nick Shirley's mom, Brooke Shirley. And I'm going to show you why that is here in a second. But first, before we get into that, so if you haven't picked it up, I believe from what I understood, and I wish I could find the source on this, my understanding is that at some point, David Hoke actually did work a real job where he where he worked as a, not the documentary filmmaker is not a real job. I just don't know how much money they could possibly have made about these two boys who grew up together and love the Minnesota Twins, want to go across country and telling everybody about how they want the Twins to stay in Minnesota. Okay, guys, sure, whatever. But basically, that guy from then until now. In fact, at one point in 1999, I read this interview with David Hoke where he actually said, "We are committed." Is it 99? Yeah, committed to see through that the Minnesota Twins are going to get their own stadium in Minneapolis if it takes 10 years. Okay, 10 years was 2009. So to keep himself busy, he runs for political office or he engages in different kinds of like little games where basically he is an activist without being necessarily registered. I don't think he is registered that I saw as a lobbyist, but basically an activist for the Republican Party. He'll say anything they want him to say, and he'll get up there and basically he's basically willing to humiliate himself for the benefit of the Republican Party just to get the media to shine a light on him and make it look like he cares about these things that are actually Republican Party initiatives. To wit, it appears that the person actually in charge of collecting all this information is not David Hoke, is not his friend Joe Marble, who apparently is a state representative. When David ran for governor, his buddy Joe ran for the House in Minnesota and won. David did not win. And then, so apparently he says he has contacts inside the House. He's mainly trying to make people believe that his source in the House is his best friend, Joe Marble. It turns out the ones who have actually taken credit for it are Lisa DeMuth and her associates. This is Lisa DeMuth. Basically, she is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. She is a Republican. She is a Black woman. I believe that's significant because she is the first, I believe, Black woman to serve as a Republican either as a Republican in the House or first woman of color to serve as the Speaker of the House. I had that in my notes at one point, but I've lost those notes. But it's something like that. She's significant that you have a woman of color, and good for them. But basically, she is taking credit, and her party and her organization inside the House are taking credit for all this research on Somali immigrants owning these various businesses. And I want to show you why I think that's important. Oh boy, is it not loaded anymore? Oh, this is Asha Hassan. This is about Asha Hassan. I must have pulled it down. We're going to come back here while I look up my I have it here. Hold on. Lisa DeMuth. David Hoke. If you look up Lisa DeMuth, that's DEMUTH. I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing that right. David Hoke, HOCH. You should get access to a video that recently was published where they did an interview. Boom. Star Tribune is one of the articles I read that exposed that David Hoke's real name, that they didn't dox him apparently he's not been, I don't know if he told them not to put his name out there. Does anybody? Oh yeah, I do have 2 channels going on YouTube. I have 2 lives going on, Tim. I didn't realize that's what you were asking. Yeah, I'm live on 2 channels. Well, same channel, 2 lives. One is vertical, one is not. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find it under the news. Ba-ba-ba. Was on Facebook of all places. Anyways, so that basically they have a right-wing news channel in Minnesota called Alpha News. Is that the most right-wing news that you've ever heard of? Alpha News. You got all the alpha males get their alpha news, and they featured an interview with the treasurer of the state of Minnesota, Tim Walz, treasurer, being him basically interviewing this guy David Hoke, who comes out to reveal all this useful information, and the person sitting right next to him, couple seats in the shot, is Lisa DeMuth, and basically she has come out to say as much after this Nick Shirley video blew up. All of a sudden, she wanted credit for the fact that they're basically feeding all this information is being fed by the GOP in the House of Representatives in Minnesota's state legislature, and that's how that goes. So enough, so much about that. We'll do a follow-up on the claims that are being made here. I do want to just quickly show you a little bit more of that interview that David did with Nick Shirley. I'm going to pull that back up. This is going to become significant to why I was content. When I switch screens, you guys can still hear me, right? Anybody who wants to confirm that for me. I was content to let this Nick Shirley thing go because, frankly, it makes me feel bad. It makes me angry. And I'm already passionately working on covering stories about ICE in Minnesota and how we need to speak out morally against the policies that are getting people, frankly, killed in this country, and especially in Minnesota right now, but not exclusively in Minnesota. By the way, it would appear that at least one more person has actually been murdered by ICE since Renee Nicole Good. And it was, again, caught on camera. It was as recently as this Sunday. There appears to be a man who was actually the police knelt on his neck, the ICE knelt on his neck, George Floyd style. And by the end of the video, he is completely limp. He does not, and ICE carry him away. He has not been heard from since, and he has not been entered into ICE's registration. It does appear, and it's now Wednesday. There's still, as far as I understand, as of today, there still is no record of him in ICE's system. Almost certainly, it appears that this man was killed by ICE agents kneeling on his neck and on camera. So we're waiting to see how that turns up. Supposedly, they either, if he's alive, they'll, because this man is a U.S. citizen, it's been confirmed he is an American citizen, and but he does have a Hispanic name, yeah. So we're waiting to find out if his body shows up in the morgue or if he shows up dumped onto a city street, which is apparently the way that Immigration Customs Enforcement has been handling it out there since. So we're waiting to find out if this man is alive or dead. So, and he's not the only one this year. He's not the only one since this administration began. It is extremely frustrating. So, but what I want to show you here is that I was content to let this go until another interview, now defunct, last week came out with Nick Shirley and David Hoke, showing that their next target is autism centers, autism therapy. And I'll tell you why this is upsetting me right now. The reason why I was content to let it go until this. I have a son in ABA therapy. it is not easy to find good ABA therapy in this country. And some of my dearest and closest friends work in ABA therapy and related therapy. ABA therapy in itself is controversial, but there are good therapies that are made available through ABA therapy approved centers, because ABA therapy is one of the few evidence-based treatments that is recognized by the FDA and recognized as actual therapy. So, so these ABA therapy centers are all over the country. Now, when these daycare centers were highlighted by Nick Shirley's video, all across the country, the government started shutting off funding to all of these daycare centers in the excuse that they now know there's massive fraud in the system in Minnesota, therefore it must be the same all over the country. And now they have placed extra hoops for all of these daycare centers that are funded through government programs to qualify for payments that they could normally make, and putting extra hurdles so that they can basically shut off their funding and tell them, if your service was so valuable, your customers would be paying for it. Well, of course, these systems exist to support working class people, and they just don't care. They obviously don't care that they're hurting working class people, is what it is. You're working class, you're poor, fuck you. America doesn't give a shit. That's basically the message. Now, lots of people, if you don't know, ABA therapy, if you pay for it out of pocket, especially if you go to send a kid to all day ABA therapy, it can cost you $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month. Can't afford it? Fuck you. Go jump in a river. That's the message. And I'm here to tell you, it will not surprise me at all to find that now that Nick Shirley is going gung-ho about autism centers in Minnesota being fraudulent scams being run by Somali immigrants, to see that tomorrow daycare centers, or not daycare centers, but ABA therapy centers like my son's may find themselves without funding. Now, I don't know how much funding goes to my son's therapy centers. I'm weighing right now whether or not to reveal this conversation. People in the ex-Mormon community will know about a certain creator that no longer broadcasts after he was doxxed while I was on the show on his program. And people started calling his therapy center, his ABA therapy center in, I'm not going to say where, and basically harassing him because he's an ex-Mormon content creator. And they basically have started harassing him and his family and threatening to harm them, harm their business. And so he took down his channel. I didn't say who it was, and I hope he doesn't mind my bringing that up. I get into trouble sometimes for saying things, for saying the wrong thing. I can tell you this. So he and I had a conversation because the Church of Korihor has a program that we're kicking off where we take art created by neurodivergent people, autistic people, and sell it and auction it in order to support a fund that will go towards scholarships to support children who need ABA therapy and autism therapy. I happened to contact this friend asking him about this. And I said, this was early last year. And I happened to say to him then, how many people do you know in this industry? And he had said, a lot. This is a summary of the conversation. And I said, how many do you know in order to keep their ABA therapy, their autism therapy center open, need to be able to take Medicaid funds or similar government funds? He said, I can't speak to other funds, other programs, but Medicaid, a lot. And I said, like, if somebody were to shut off, because at that point, we were all of us in the autism community, all of us who are parents of autistic children were concerned that the Trump administration and or their big beautiful bill were going to shut off all Medicaid funding to autism therapy. And for those of us with children in autism therapy, for many of us, including myself, if they shut off all government slash, all government funding towards it, even if our insurance companies paid for the therapy, the providers would almost certainly go away just because there wouldn't be enough money in the system for insurance supported and out of pocket supported therapies. And I have close friends here in Utah. I mentioned that it takes $5,000 a month to keep a kid in all day ABA therapy. That's because I have a close personal friend who pays that because their family makes too much money and their insurance won't cover it. And Utah is one of the few states that does not that refuses to force insurance companies to accept ABA therapy or autism therapy in their coverage. So if they were to shut off that Medicaid funding, it very plausibly would spell out for a lot of people, maybe most people, millions of kids all over this country would wind up with no therapy at all. And I highly suspect that Lisa DeMuth, for her agenda there in Minnesota and all the GOP, I think this is really what they're going after. They will do whatever they can to try and convince Americans that every child with autism either doesn't have it. You saw this last year with this whole Tylenol fiasco. Either doesn't really have autism or autism isn't real, or that anybody who gets services for autism is really just siphoning off of the taxpayer. It is a matter of days. It could be very feasibly a matter of hours at this point. Now that this video has been published, they appear to be trying to shut off autism therapy. So here we go.
To a doctor's appointment, whatever the case might be, or Costco or wherever they're going. Because remember, it's non-emergency medical transportation. Well, we went to Costco because they have to eat or they'll die. So that's considered, right? So it's almost impossible to figure out from the outside what exactly the payments are for each of these trips. But I have a pretty good idea. So when someone provides a transportation to a facility or a location, they're also paid for the time to sit there and wait for the appointment to end and then drive the person back. So they're paid 3 different ways. And the average is going to be $50 per trip. So it's going to the appointment as a trip, coming back trip. So that's $100 per round trip. So if you have 800 companies in Minnesota that are NEMT companies, they all own 20 vehicles and they're all making 10 trips a day, and it's $50 per trip. So it's 800 times 20 times.
You can play.
Boy, they go for some strange things in YouTube ads these days. Okay. I was mentioning to somebody just the other day that I get ads on YouTube. It used to be that YouTube would shut down ads for my clients because they made claims that sounded too much like medical claims, or that AI bots had determined sounded too much like it was a cryptocurrency thing when it had nothing to do with cryptocurrency. Now they're flat out advertising pornography. They'll advertise scams. They don't care. YouTube's just gone the whole other way. Sorry, YouTube, but you know it's true. You know this about yourself. So basically, this is what they go. You saw the little hub that they demonstrated that they illustrated on the video. They're basically saying, look, if you run a daycare center, if you run an autism center, or if you own or if you are running a transportation, non-emergency medical transportation in the state of Minnesota, chances are you are Somali. I don't know that to be true or untrue. So far, my research has turned up that it is true that there are apparently many businesses owned by Somali immigrants. But again, there's nothing illegal about that. But they're trying to paint it that if you own one of these businesses or start one of these businesses and you're taking government funds, which again, these are generally people who are first generation Americans or green card holders, people who are in the country legally in most cases that I've seen. I haven't seen a case of an undocumented immigrant yet. That they're trying to paint it as these people obviously are all just siphoning taxpayer dollars off of the government. And in spite of the fact that so far, with the daycare centers, it's been shown again and again through surveillance footage, through government records, through and through footage from local news media, that they are lying. They are lying that there's no kids involved in these daycare centers. They're just lying. But it takes 2, 3, 4 days for the news to get out there and validate which things they're actually reporting on are true and which ones are not. And then they come out with it piecemeal over the course of the next 3, 4 days. By that point, the damage is done. By that point, Washington has already reacted. It took like 24 hours from when Nick Shirley's first video dropped to when the federal government announced they were shutting off funding for daycare centers that were connected to government funding, and that those daycare centers were going to have to start jumping through extra hoops in order to get payments. We still don't know, and we probably won't know for quite some time, how many of these daycare centers have already shut down or are going to have to shut down because they literally do paycheck. They literally are functioning paycheck to paycheck, much less the fact that all of the daycare centers that supposedly were operating with fraudulent, claims have either already been shut down or are already under investigation to be shut down. And the people as I said, this was one of the people that they were reporting on, Asha Hassan. Not only did Nick Shirley not break the story that this person is related to some kind of, it has been fraudulently misusing funds, but frankly, it's been months since this person pleaded guilty. So their claim that the government of Minnesota and the courts in Minnesota and law enforcement in Minnesota are doing nothing about this doesn't hold water. They didn't know about it until somebody pleaded guilty and has been passed down a court order to give $16 million back to the government. So as far as we can tell, these guys are reporting on news that is 2, 3, 4 months old or older and calling it breaking news. And so in any event, I wanted to talk a little bit about, while we're here, I'm going to pull this up. Again, sorry guys, this isn't better prepared, but there's so much that's been coming at me. I'm going to go to TikTok. Those of you who want to follow along at home, TikTok, if you put into Google, you can go to tiktok.com, and then I'm going to put in the handle Brooker T. Jones. I'll pull this up and show you guys here. Okay. So when I do that, I'm going to show you my screen here. This is what it looks like when you do that. Very useful tool. Put in the name of the website, like a social media site, then then put in the name of the username of the person. Those of you who want to know my secret tricks. This woman is Brooker T. Jones. Her real name is not Brooker. It is not T, and it is not Jones. Her real name is Brooke Shirley. I have an interview with her. I'm probably not going to show you now, where she explains that basically when she was a kid growing up in Southern California, she was known as Brooker T. And so when she started this TikTok account, she called it Brooker T. Jones because she thought that sounded good. She thought that sounded cute, basically. And she basically does. She is a Mormon. She does content like this. You see, she's wearing Nick Shirley's little sweatshirt here. I never saw a grift they didn't love. And she just basically makes anti-immigrant content and makes it more and more angry ever since people have been exposing. Look, here she is with David Hoke.
Here in Minnesota with a massive daycare fraud, people are wondering, how are these daycares getting the money?
There are two revenue streams going.
Again, the date of this is January 2nd. This is old news. They just basically, she and her son Nick run the same stories over and over again and just kind of do it with a little bit different flair and because he served his mission in Chile, his Mormon mission in Chile, he has he can speak Spanish, and so he goes out there. This is one that I had responded to angrily on my TikTok.
We are learning more about the ICE agent who fatally shot the 37-year-old woman, the mother of 3, yesterday in Minneapolis. This same ICE agent back in June in Bloomington, Minnesota, was dragged.
It's more of that. Basically, if it comes out of the president of the United States' mouth, this woman repeats it. If it comes out from the Republican Party, she repeats it and breaks it as quote
It's
unquote
official.
breaking news.
We are learning.
I won't belabor the point. You can see some of these comments. People already responding to her about, you're obviously lying. You just grift whatever you're going to grift. It's all, we're a divided nation. This is a nation where people are using social media to come after each other, but not everybody is, blonde soccer mom, who's trying to pretend like she is a journalist. I don't know that Brooke Shirley doesn't have a journalism degree. So far as I can tell, we know that she and her husband were involved in a fraudulent scheme. We have the court records that you can look up. I haven't read through the whole thing. I haven't done any coverage on it because, frankly, I don't think it's that interesting. But it is somewhat ironic that this woman who loves to go out and expose supposedly fraud in the immigrant community is herself involved in a corporation that was taking gym donations. Right there, you got a fraud in itself. That's a joke. That's a joke. Taking gym membership subscriptions, and then using the funds apparently to purchase investment properties. And when the gymnasiums that are supposed to be getting paid out of this found out that they were doing this by filtering, basically creating fake employees and paying them, and then using the money from these fake employees, the payroll from these fake employees, to go out and buy investment properties that they were renting out as rental properties. These gyms, cashed in, and these investors and the shareholders in the company cashed in. This is like, I think, if I remember correctly, this is like some 10, 15 years ago. So it's kind of old news. It's a little bit ironic, and I don't really feel like covering it because, frankly, it's not that interesting to me. But if you've heard that this guy Nick Shirley comes from a family that's, that are themselves involved in fraud, that's the story apparently. And I probably got some of those details wrong. It's that's the general picture of it. But once again, we have all of this coverage, and it's entirely about immigrants or unsheltered people. She goes to Portland and does things there. I wanted to show you this so that you're familiar with who Nick Shirley's mom is. Hold up. I'm getting better at this thing. Okay. So you are familiar with, this is who Brooker T. Jones is. Okay. Brooke Shirley. And she's the one, you'll hear her, she goes on the news to defend her son. Nick Shirley's mom, comes on to defend her son. She's not defending him. She's the reason, she appears to be the reason why he's doing this at all. For the past 2 years, apparently since he's been back from his mission, they just do this. They just travel around the country, appear on Newsmax together, and then she runs some story about immigrants. He runs a story about immigrants on his channel, and they just tag team this, this anti-immigrant propaganda when they're not going to, for example, Texas, and running stories about Islam versus Christianity and throwing out a whole bunch of Islamophobic, criticism of Islam. Now, is there plenty to criticize about Islam? You betcha. You bet your pants there is. But that's about Islam. That's not about every Muslim. Not every Muslim believes in the same kind of Islam. They all read the Quran, supposedly, and they all believe in Muhammad, etc. But that's not so strange and not so different from Mormonism, as I talked about last week, where Mormonism, the founder of Mormonism, claims that he would be to this country, to this generation, a second Muhammad, and that he would enforce recruitment to Mormonism with the sword. Let me pull up. I think I have this story. Shoot, where is it? Hold on. This time. Again, I'm throwing a lot at you guys here just because I've been following up on all these stories. Where's Brooke's story about? Well, I'll just find it on our YouTube channel. We'll do it again. Here we go. Maybe it's here on this channel. YouTube.com. Brooker T. Jones. I may have to just do this live. We'll do it live. How you guys doing? Okay, here it is. We'll just do it live.
Do you think Tim Walz will go to jail for this?
So there is a criminal complaint, a formal.
Okay, here we go. I'm going to load up this into the viewer. Okay. So this is the YouTube channel for Brooker T. Jones. This is, again, Nick Shirley's mom. And she's going to talk about the Minnesota state flag. This is a similar claim that was made in Nick Shirley's video about Somali immigrants owning daycare centers and supposedly fraudulent.
Here in the state of Minnesota, they recently adopted a new state flag. The flag is flying right behind me. And people here in Minnesota are upset about this because this flag looks a lot like the flag from Somalia. Here in Minnesota, they have the largest Somalian population of anywhere in America. And now the flag looks just like the flag from Somalia. The dark blue on this flag represents Minnesota. The light blue represents the 10,000 lakes, and they have the North Star on that flag. The Somalian flag has the color of that blue with a white star right in the middle, very similar to the state flag here that's being flown. The original state flag in Minnesota paid tribute to the Native Americans, but now the flag, is it paying tribute to the Somalians? Because here in Minnesota, the Somalian population is huge. There were over 2,600 flags submitted for the new state flag, and the government here in Minnesota chose that to be their state flag. That to me looks a lot like the flag from Somalia. Let me know your thoughts on this one. Here in the state of
course it does. Okay. Everybody feel caught up on the claim being made here. Okay. So let me just recap for you. The claim is that the new flag was somehow by the government under Tim Walz redesigned to resemble the Somali flag or a Somaliland flag, specifically to cater to Somali immigrants. Okay. While I'm doing this, I'm going to pull up the Minnesota flag. Okay. And she says that basically she's making the accusation that Tim Walz and or the Democrats have done this specifically to cater to Somali immigrants because they want them to vote Democrat to keep Tim Walz as governor and or to keep Democrats in power. It's the claim. Okay, so this is the, let me see if I find the page I was actually looking at before. Okay, let me go ahead and pull up the flag. Okay. The other claims I want you to remember. So one is that it's supposed to represent it's supposed to resemble the Somali flag. Two is that it doesn't pay homage to Native Americans. And this is the part that really is going to piss us off. It pisses me off anyway. That the old flag paid homage to Native Americans. And the new one does not because for some reason Tim Walz and the Democrats, it's implied, prefer Somali people over indigenous people. At a time, Brooke, when ICE is literally disappearing Native Americans who are U.S. citizens, U.S. people in Minnesota, and just disappearing them. This is and specifically those who are unsheltered. This is horrendous. This is an incredible crime against humanity that this woman is out here smearing Democrats, smearing immigrants, and then of course now trying to drag indigenous people into the story. And I'm going to show you why. Okay. This is the actual flag of Minnesota previous to the redesign. Now I want you, hopefully you'll be able to see this once I zoom in. Someone holler loud enough for me to hear. So I'm going to zoom in, okay, on this flag. Maybe I'll back out of this. So this is the original flag. You're going to notice a star here. Do you see these stars around here? 19 stars arranged in the shape of a 5-pointed star behind the seal. This is not the original seal, but it's similar to the original seal and or flag. Back in the day, when they were adding a lot of states to the Union, lots of them, including Utah, had this blue field and then this circle. Okay, notice that the blue field that she says is meant to resemble the Somali flag, which is a 5-pointed star on a blue field. That she says that blue is meant to look like Somalia's flag. Look at this blue. It is the flag's color. It is the color of the Minnesota flag. She's lying. And then she mentioned the North Star is placed there to resemble the 5-pointed star that's on the Somali flag. That doesn't make any sense at all, and I'll be able to show you that here in a moment. So let me just cover this back up and continue to talk. Okay, so but the claim that I think needs to be addressed here is that these, I'm going to pull up a closer look at this flag, is that this has been done so that Somali immigrants and Somali people will feel like the flag represents them. And get an even closer look at this flag. Okay, here we go. Open this one up, tab, and show it to you. Everybody see everything okay? Somebody, get Nikki to buzz me on my phone or something if there's a problem, because I have to actually physically switch over to switch tabs here. Okay. Well, here, let's just do this. Let's do it this way. I know this is a little bit disorganized, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get better at this. I'm going to stop sharing that screen. Stop screen. I'm going to share a tab. That'll make it easier on me. We'll see if it works. If it works, it works. There. Okay. So everybody should be able to see now. Everybody can see this flag, right? Okay. So if you look at this flag, let me see if I can zoom. If I zoom in on it, does it zoom everywhere? Get back there. Cool. Okay. So you're going to see that on this flag, there's in French, there's a phrase across the top of the flag. Forgive my bad French, actually bad French. It says l'étoile du Nord, which means the North Star. Remember, she said they added this star to look like it's the Somali flag? No. From the beginning, since this state has been a state, the phrase across the top in French, because the immigrants who had settled originally in Minnesota were French immigrants, right? During the time even leading up to what we call the French and Indian War, and should call the 7 Years' War. L'Étoile du Nord means the North Star. The new star that's on the flag is specifically, I think, a 7 or 8-pointed star instead of a 5-pointed star, specifically to set it apart as not just a star, but specifically the North Star, to pay homage to the original flag. And so that's what we're talking about here. Now, you remember that she said in the original flag, it paid homage to the or I think she says homage, but to Native Americans. Okay, everybody see this close up? What you're seeing here, if you look at the Somali flag, this is the reason why since the 1980s, the Somali flag, the Minnesota flag, I'm going to get definitely clipped about that. Ever since the 1980s, they've been trying to remake the image of the state of Minnesota because of this seal and flag. You'll see that it shows a white settler plowing a field next to a tree stump, resting against which is a rifle with a powder horn, like a settler who is armed, ready to fight. And to the left or west of that settler, that white settler, is a Native American riding west because they're being driven from the state. And that's the reason why for 30, 40, 50 years now, they have been trying to come up with a softer and softer image that still pays homage to the original flag that people have been associated with. And a lot of Minnesotans, this much is true. A lot of Minnesotans think there's nothing wrong with this flag because they're racist. I'm sorry. You think there's nothing wrong with this flag because you're racist. It literally is celebrating chasing indigenous people off of their own land. Now, in I believe it was 1983, they came up with a variation. Let me see if I can find that actually. Here, let me take this down. I'll show you the actual the second version. There we go. Haha. I found it. Open a new tab. Close that. Here. Tab. Okay. I'm getting good at this. All right. This right here is okay, Reddit, is the flag that they redesigned, okay, in the 1980s. Now you're going to notice that they tried to incorporate a simpler design, simpler shapes, so that when it was transferred in a way that it was duplicated on both sides of the flag, it would have fewer details that have to duplicate on both sides of the flag, is the way I understand it anyways. And then you'll see that the stump is there, the gun is there, the powder horn is there, but they've all been simplified. And now they have introduced the and then they introduced the indigenous person, who is ironically shown in white here. The Indian riding the horse westward is supposed to be facing towards the settler and interacting as if they are partners, is the way that I understand it. So this was the first attempt to try and soften the image of Minnesota's state flag. I think everybody can agree it's performative. It's gross. There's nothing about this scene that can be remade to make it less racist. This is racist to begin with. It's going to be racist. And a lot of people, now you go to Alpha News, which is, again, Minnesota's local Fox News. This is their local right-wing radical news. And you'll find comment after comment of people saying there was nothing wrong with this flag. There was nothing wrong with this flag, which is disgusting. Now, I just want to just say, this is my opinion. I can't tell you every one of these people are racist. It would be a matter of my judgment anyways if I were to say that these people are being racist. And it is. I judge them. I don't claim I don't judge people. I'm not Christian. I judge the hell out of all of you. And some of you, I judge you very well. And I love you. I love your faces. Others are people the others are people who think there's nothing wrong with this flag. Okay? This flag is about racism. That's what it is. And it's no surprise. This is a pretty racist country that's trying to do better. I will say this for us Americans, we are trying to do better. So let me show you the new flag. So this flag was commissioned by the House of Representatives. It wasn't commissioned, as far as I am aware, by Tim Walz in any way. I don't think Tim Walz had anything to do with it, frankly. And so this is the actual flag as it looks now. Whoops. There's the early picture of me, quote unquote, burning all bridges. I just wanted to get some clickbaity image up there to get people to join in because I know it's late and I want people to have fun. Okay, here we go. The answer, by the way, to the question, will ExmoJoe burn all bridges? Well, maybe I'll talk about it. No is the answer. But I will talk about bridge burning associated with me that may or may not come up in news if people follow the follow news in the Exmo space. This is the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I called it 7-pointed star. Wait a second. 3, 6, 7, 8. 8-pointed star that now represents the North Star on the new flag. The blue behind it is the same blue as the original flag. Part of the reason why there was another iteration, by the way, of their flag that had blue, the same blue across the top, and then it had a star, I believe a 5-pointed star in the center, and then green across the bottom, and a kind of swiggle that I think is supposed to represent the rivers and bodies of water in the state. But it was rejected by the government because it was determined that it looked too similar to other flags and that had too much. Back in the days when all these states, including Utah, by the way, we have our own controversy about our redesign of our new flag, which personally, I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. But some people are really, really upset about it. Those old blue flags that had the state seal on it, they're basically all they're all going away, but they have to look different from each other, different enough, according to the government. I believe it's an act of Congress. Don't quote me on that. That says they have to look different enough that you could recognize it from a distance to say that is the flag of such and such state. So that's how you came to have this this flag. I don't have it apparently pulled up. Sorry for that. I reviewed some interviews with the guy who designed this state flag for Minnesota. This guy so basically the designer who won the award, won the contest for this redesign of the flag, which again is more based on that flag that took the whole seal out, replaced it with the North Star, and then had blue and green across it. The guy who redesigned it and created this flag is very liberal. I don't want to speak for him. I will say from watching the interview, I got the impression, but could not find anything about it. And I'm not saying he's obligated to reveal it. I took the impression that he is gay. And that's where I'm really starting to get pissed off about the whole reason why Nick Shirley and Brooke Shirley are specifically coming after this flag and making it a point and issue to try and associate this flag with Somali immigrants. The Instagram account of this particular designer, maybe I'll try to find his Instagram. I won't. Let's leave this alone. I'm going to leave this whole subject because it's frankly making me upset. Basically, yeah. Well, Utah did for a long time too, Lisa. Basically, this the designer of this flag posts a lot of comments on his Instagram, which is his right to do. I thought we lived in a country that believed in freedom of speech, about how much he dislikes Donald Trump, about how much he disapproves of the current administration's immigration policies, things like this, which, he is a designer. That doesn't mean everything that the man does is connected ideologically to his work, which, as far as I can tell, is perfectly suitable. You ask me, it's not a particularly pretty flag, but state flags are generally like that. This is a perfectly suitable flag, and it has nothing racist on it. That's an improvement. You ask me, this is a significant improvement over the original flag, and it's one that doesn't continue. It neither continues to pay homage nor doesn't continue to pay homage to Indigenous people and Native Americans, Brooks, because the whole idea behind redesigning this flag, which your state voted to do, your state legislators, not yours. As far as I know, she doesn't even live in Minnesota. As far as I'm aware, Nick Shirley and his mom live here in Utah. As far as I can tell, You guys vote. They voted for it. Minnesota voted to change the flag because it was racist, and they wanted they wanted a change. They wanted a future where they didn't continue to perpetuate racist stereotypes. And it bothers me to see these Mormon podcasters like Latter Daily Saints and Quick Media and Ward Radio and etc. And of course, Patrick Bet David, who is not Mormon, but does a lot of pro-Mormon stuff, has done a lot of pandering and catering to Mormon audiences throughout the years. Who also does a lot of pandering, by the way, I will just go ahead and say it, to white supremacists of a broad variety across the country. It's a man whose whole business, in my opinion, appears to be dedicated around impressing conservative white people that he thinks that they are right, and that all of the world is falling to chaos because of immigrants coming to these countries that are traditionally white. And they eat it right up. They love it. Of course they do, especially because when it's said by somebody like Patrick Bet David, who is an immigrant himself from Iran. We don't have to get into. It's not necessary always to get into his history as a Christian Iranian. I don't know how much of that factors into this. And frankly, I don't think that has to factor into it at all, the story. But for whatever reason, Patrick Bet David has a chip on his shoulder about this, and he wants to cater to this audience. Let him do what he wants. May freedom ring and everybody have, whatever, blah, blah, blah. No, not blah, blah, blah. Have freedom of speech, say what they want, freedom of the press, etc. All right. So, I wanted to show you, let's see if I found the actual thing. Okay, yeah, here we go. Is this the actual? Oh, yeah. Okay, so it's the one that ends in, again, these are files, raw files off of my phone. The one ends at 397. I wanted to show you because I thought it was great. So basically on Monday, my flesh and blood sister and I, for the Church of Korihor, we went on another mission trip for an afternoon to Colorado City / Hilldale, Utah. After my last week's show where we talked about Nick Shirley's video trying to expose Warren Jeffs, saying that they went into Warren Jeffs' old house in Colorado City and felt bad spirits there, but knew that this place was where Warren Jeffs had taken child brides and done things to them, done things to women, abused women. That would be true, except that this actual facility that they were in wasn't strictly owned by Warren Jeffs, although of course it was under the UEP, their United Order, their church trust, while he was the prophet. It was actually originally the home of Rulon Jeffs, his father, who was also a polygamist. And the building, if you remember, if you've seen the series Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, those words were on the chimneys or on the buildings of two buildings right next to each other in this compound that was all inside one wall. And on one side it would say Keep Sweet. That was Rulon Jeffs' building. And the other side, there was a building that belonged to Warren Jeffs, his son, that said Pray and Obey. Today, Pray and Obey have been knocked off of that building, the Warren Jeffs building, because an organization that was founded in part by one of Warren Jeffs' wives, Brielle Decker, has become a facility for helping people. Yeah, cool. Oh yeah, absolutely. Should that one of the wives of Warren Jeffs, Brielle Decker, has since helped to found an organization or work with an organization that's known as the Dream Center, to renovate that part of the facility that they purchased as a transition facility, particularly not just for women leaving polygamy, but women in the Colorado City / Hilldale, Utah area. That's, it's right on the border. So Colorado City side is Arizona, Hilldale side is Utah. We went in and out of Nikki and I went in and out of Arizona and Utah as we drove through, right? And one side of that facility is now one of these resource centers. It's not sober living. I talked to Brielle Decker and asked her, has that ever been sober living? She said no. The other facility, she said, that went to a Stubbs man. And I said, sorry, not intimately connected enough with the FLDS to know what you mean by that. I know some FLDS people. I've interviewed FLDS people, but frankly, the whole thing gives me such a bad vibe. I don't fuck with the FLDS hardly at all. I avoid it as much as I can. And she said Stubbs is a name in the FLDS community of some of these polygamists who are, it's a connected family. I'm like, okay, so Stubbs are connected to the Jeffs. And she says very much so. I'm like, okay. So it was given from one polygamist family, from the polygamist church to a man in the polygamist family. And she says, and he's the one who sold it to Jensen Property Management, who owns that building. I want to show you that. And if I reveal too much, I hope that's not a problem. This is raw files off of my phone. What did I said earlier, guys? What number? It was like one that ends in 937, I think, or something like that. Oh, Joseph. Hold on, let me find this number. The one that ends in 397. Boom, boom, boom. Video file. Here we go. Here we go. Nope, that's not. Oh, here. Oh, good. I can preview. Oh no, it's not 397. We might have to cancel. Here, let me see if I can just load it up and just show it to you the old-fashioned way. Oh yeah. Okay, here we go. 7550. Okay. This is raw. Forgive. Oh, okay. I'm gonna do this, you guys. We're gonna do this. Share screen. Entire screen with sound. There. Fuck. Why you gotta make it so damn hard? All right. Sorry if I swear, guys. Fuck. Why you gotta make everything so damn hard? Okay. So you should be seeing now on this screen oh, I can do volume of over 100%. That's weird. A sign that is right outside that building that Nick Shirley and Shane Baldwin went in. And you'll see that it says for rent, Zion View Apartments. Now, the reason why I point this out is the whole basis of their comment some 6 months ago when they did their show. Got hair in my mouth. Was that they couldn't find anybody in this sober living facility. The implication made that this place is obviously receiving some kind of public funds, basically the whole daycare center thing over again. They're receiving some kind of funds, some kind of charitable funds, and they're not actually housing anybody who is in sober living. Then they knock on the door and a woman answers it. They ask, what is this place? She said, these are apartments. And they said, is this like a sober living thing? She said, no, it isn't. They're just apartments. And he asked, what was this place? And she said, this used to be Warren Jeff's house. Okay. As you can see from this for rent sign and this private property, and you'll see the rates listed. A studio apartment, it's actually pretty good rates considering what everything goes for out here now. A studio apartment is $550. 2-bed, 2-bath, $800. 2-bed, 2-bath. I don't know what the difference is. $1,200. 3-bedroom, 3-bath, It's looking like $1,300, 5 bed, 5 bath, $1,800. Now you tell me of a sober living facility that's charging that, and nothing about this sign indicates that it is sober living in any way or that it is publicly funded. You're right. It does. It does look like the Dream Center basically doesn't exist anymore, unless
That van says
This
so. I
is-
think it's that back building only.
So this is the part where Nikki is right and I am wrong. She happened to see as we were driving around the block, she saw that there were trucks and trailers parked inside the wall. You see this wall here? That wall goes all around that block. And inside there, she happened to see that there was branding on the trucks that said Dream Center on it. And I was still at the point where I was like, I don't think this place exists anymore. I think that maybe they got everybody out and now they don't exist anymore.
I mean, maybe they turned this into a business here, but
I made part of the complex.
because
Private.
the van in that driveway, which was not there when we passed earlier.
And you said somebody answered when you called earlier.
Yeah, first ring, very nice.
So Nikki and I had called earlier because we had gotten some blankets that donated because we have this mission to take blankets to people who are living rough on the streets. The blankets we got were made lovingly with care. They were those tied blankets. I mean, they were tied in knots around the edge, right? They were 2 layers of material, and the patterns on these blankets had like little Grogu from Star Wars, or they had like dinosaurs. They were blankets meant for kids. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I would go up to Salt Lake, which I'm doing, by the way, day after tomorrow, to take blankets, and there wouldn't be people who would take one of these blankets. They probably would, but most of them, having done this once before, would probably say, I can't take that blanket. That blanket's for a child, number one. And number two, they're going to prefer blankets that have padding in them, and these did not. They're very warm, very comfortable. It's not what they're looking for. I wish I could make these comments go away. Anyway, scammers, fuck off. In any event, so we said, you know what, we should make sure that these go to families. They should go to single moms. They should go to kids who are in foster care. They should go to somebody who's going to need it, who's going to appreciate them. And so we contacted the Dream Center. And I said, well, what about the Dream Center? Because we had covered last week how Nick Shirley and Shane Baldwin from Zion Media had gone to this building, apparently gotten it wrong, that it's not sober living and it's not, a scam of some kind. It literally is apartment buildings. It's not even associated with the only charitable organization that has a facility on that block, which is the Dream Center. And I called Brielle Decker and she confirmed that. She's like, yeah, it's us and the mission home that's also owned there by Dream Center. And they're on the other 2 corners of this walled off block. And so, but like I said, grifters got to grift. That whole video was just about how Warren Jeffs was a con man. And then all of the things, those of you who were with us last week, you'll see how every criticism they lobbed at Warren Jeffs, the polygamist, was actually also true about Joseph Smith. And these 2 Mormons pretended like they didn't, like it wasn't. Or maybe they even believe that it isn't. But every single thing they have said about Muhammad, everything they have said about Warren Jeffs, these Mormon podcasters act as if it isn't also true about Joseph Smith and the founding of Mormonism, when it 100% totally is. Same issue with the Brooke Shirley, and her video about the Minnesota state flag being a Somali flag and taking away homage to the, let me just pull this up, Elmo. And paying homage to Native Americans. It didn't. It was a racist flag. That's why they had to change it. But this connects back to this white supremacy. And every time they mention it, every single one of these shorts, every single one of these TikToks, every single one of these episodes that where this gets mentioned, these Mormon podcasters say somebody out there is going to try and make this about white people and about white supremacy. You know, hold on. You know, but that's because it always comes back to this. Book of Mormon. I lost my passage here. I get so many notes and I like throw them here and there and try to organize them and then forget them. So anyways, but this brought, okay, that's right. 2 Nephi 5. Okay, I'm just going to show you this. Second Nephi 5. This is why it pisses me off, Brooke. And you can call me out. You're welcome on my program, friends. Oh, cool. This is actually from the original Book of Mormon. This is from the 1830 Book of Mormon. Cool. We'll do this one. I'm going to show it to you. This is why I find it relevant. And someone is going to call me out and say, I'm reading too much into it. I'm making too big of a deal out of it. Come on my show. You're welcome to. You're welcome to explain to me how I am being a jerk. Okay. This is 2 Nephi chapter 5. We're going to come down here to verse 20. Wherefore the word of the Lord was fulfilled, which he spake unto me, saying, inasmuch as they, this is Nephi, who he and his people are white people who happen to be Jews in 600 BCE, inasmuch as they, his brother and his brothers Laman and Lemuel, will not hearken unto thy words, they shall be cut off from the presence of the Lord. And behold, they were cut off from his presence. Okay, just a point of order here. In Mormon theology, to be cut off from the presence of the Lord is to be damned. Do I need to go over the Mormon definition of damnation? I don't think so. I think I beat that one to death. Quote, and then verse 21, and he had caused the cursing to come upon them, yea, even a sore cursing, because of their iniquity. For behold, they had hardened their hearts against him, that they had become like unto a flint. Wherefore, as they were white and exceedingly fair and delightsome, that they might not be enticing unto my people, the Lord God did cause a skin of blackness to come upon them. Verse 22, and thus saith the Lord God, I will cause that they shall be loathsome unto thy people, save they shall repent of their iniquities. Verse 23, and cursed shall be the seed of him that mixeth with their seed, for they shall be cursed even with the same cursing. And the Lord spake it, and it was done. And because, verse 24, and because of their cursing which was upon them, they did become an idle people, full of mischief and subtlety, and did seek in the wilderness for beasts of prey. And the 25, and the Lord God said unto me, they shall be a scourge unto thy seed, to stir them in remembrance of me, and inasmuch as they will not remember me and hearken unto my words, they shall scourge them. They shall scourge them even unto destruction. Okay. Again, apropos of nothing, perhaps. I would argue not. I would argue to you that if we did not have a culture inside of Mormonism that tried to apologize away that this has nothing to do with the actual darkness of their skin, when obviously it does, this is not explaining that God actually curses people or thinks people with black skin or darker skin are ugly, in spite of the fact that the language is pretty clear that he does, that this is the whole logic behind it. If we didn't have this culture of trying to explain away the difference between white people and people who are not white, we wouldn't have people going out making videos about how people who are from Somalia must all be running scams, in spite of the fact that that's not what the evidence bears out. And so now we have, and the consequences are real, because this is a distraction. It is a way of allowing a firm in Washington, a government institution in Washington, D.C., to cut off funding to everybody across the country, to daycare centers for people everywhere across this country. And soon, I predict, autism treatment centers and ABA centers all over this country. because they know that they can drum up racism all over the country, and they need useful idiots to sell it for them. Nick Shirley, Brooke Shirley, David Hoke have become those agents. And you notice that, again, we now know that Lisa DeMuth and the GOP in the state, in the House of Representatives, they can't go out there. They can't go out there and sell it to the people directly. You could have Lisa DeMuth go out there and start knocking on Quality Learning Center's door, or ABC, children, charity or daycare. She could go out there and knock on the doors. She has hands. She has, as far as I am aware, she is an able-bodied person, but she also has to win votes in a state where she can't be seen as racist, in a state where she doesn't want to have to defend to people. Of course, I can't be racist because I am black. But you'll notice, is she out there doing it? No. She makes David Hoke do the work, because David Hoke either needs the money, or he wants the attention, or something else. And he's out there, as far as I can tell, doesn't have any skills that actually give him any ability to suss out, even thinking skills, as to whether or not any of this is true. He just does the bidding of the GOP in the state of Minnesota. And frankly, it is kind of disgusting. It is, the statements that he makes, I don't know how to separate out things David Hoke or Nick Shirley say that are supposed to sound racist, and the things that they just don't realize sound racist. At the end of the day, what difference does it make? The effect is real. And right now, there are more immigration agents in Minnesota, as far as I know, than any state in the union. And we are seeing the real life consequences of people losing their lives, because the justification that's being made right now is not that there are more undocumented immigrants. Renee Nicole Good is not an undocumented immigrant. The young man that apparently went missing on Sunday, and by all appearances is probably dead, he was not an undocumented immigrant that I can tell. The people, and there's footage now. You go on TikTok, you'll find the people posting the footage. Native Americans in the state of Minnesota, the people that Brooke Shirley wants you to be convinced, the original flag, which was totally racist against Indians, who many of them don't mind that term. And I am happy to have anybody call me out that they don't like that term. I will be happy to use a different one, at least natives. That native people are being snatched and disappeared off the streets, and being snatched out of their cars, and in some cases released just a few minutes later, and in other cases they get beaten and then released, and in other cases we're seeing people who are disappearing and no one knows what's happened to them. The next time we see or hear from them, they may be in El Salvador, and in some cases maybe they are undocumented immigrants. But undocumented immigrants, I'm just going to make a statement to you, are human beings. If they are human beings inside the United States, whether legally or not, they are U.S. persons. They are persons under the United States Constitution. They have rights under the United States Constitution, including rights to due process. If they are being held without rights to habeas corpus, the government that is holding them without declaring a suspension of habeas corpus, which I would put to you should be considered unconstitutional anyway, without declaring a suspension of habeas corpus, those people, the government that holds them or disappears them or transports them overseas, is violating the Constitution of these United States and committing a crime against humanity. And we're not new to this. In 1946, the Nuremberg trials happened, where men who were responsible for immigration policies that got millions of people killed stood in front of the world, in front of the cameras. They knew that all of history would judge them, knowing probably they would not survive, and said, I was just following orders. Well, guess what? It wasn't enough in 1946. And it's not going to be enough now. This cannot be, if this is a country that believes in freedom, I do not see how anybody can justify immoral behaviors. Now, what they do politically, let them do politically. But morally speaking, if people are dying and Nick Shirley and these other Mormon podcasters want to be a part of selling it to the people, then let that millstone be hung around their neck. I don't understand how anybody thinks that Jesus is the Christ. Can read in the Bible that Jesus said, if anyone should hurt one of these little ones, it would be better for him to have a millstone cast upon his neck and him cast into the depths of the sea, and then take away funding that is feeding children, that is giving children daycare so that their parents can work, so that they can have food in their mouths and a roof over their head, and going out and blaming every Somali immigrant, every immigrant in the country, and indeed, ultimately, in effect, every working class family in this country for the racist marginalization that some people in this country want to cast on everybody who isn't white. And you want to tell me that that isn't true? I'd be happy to hear the argument. This is your proof it's otherwise. And it's the Book of Mormon that's selling it. Tell me otherwise. In any event, I don't love I hate this thing. I don't love to do stories like this, but it's important, right? It's important that people understand where we are in this time period. I mentioned that Nikki and I went down and gave blankets. We contacted Dream Center to see if we could bring blankets for families down there. A lot of these are women who are victims of domestic violence. Some of them are victims of the FLDS. Many of them are victims of the FLDS who are trying to improve their station, improve their situation. As part of the spiritual mission of the Church of Korihor to help people who are unsheltered and shelter insecure, I said, let's bring blankets down to these kids. Next week, I plan to release some of the footage from the organization we went to benefit, and I'm going to tell you why. We called Dream Center, and they said, we're good. We have everything we need. You heard Nikki in that clip say, I called a woman who was really nice. I later had a conversation that day with Brielle Decker, comparing notes and what she had said to me that day. The person she talked to was Brielle. We called, and one of Warren Jeff's former wives told us, we're good on blankets. Take those blankets over to Cherish Families. We contacted Cherish Families and said, any chance that you could take these blankets that were obviously made for children by a woman who was very generous with her time and her talents. And they said, please, we will definitely take them. We asked them, by the way, we happen to have, and through donations that have been made, and that Nikki secured some donations, we happen to have some hygiene kits, have things like women's hygiene products particularly. Could you use them? And they said, please. We got down there and talked to them and happened to mention to them, in February, we are holding a special spiritual ceremony in a building at the Hilton Garden Inn next door to the it's at the Hilton Garden Inn. So if you know, at the same time as Thrive St. George, basically. We're not trying to compete with Thrive St. George. The event won't actually start until after Thrive St. George is finished. We ourselves have tickets to Thrive St. George. I'm very excited to go. Very excited to see it because I've never been to a Thrive event. There are going to be Exmos and Postmos and former Mormons and etc., progressive Mormons, etc., at this event from all over the world. And so we said, look, while they're in town, those who have time should come out to an art show, and I will donate paintings. You guys have seen my paintings, and we'll ask other artists to come forward and donate original art, and we'll hold a silent auction. And the proceeds from that silent auction, both for things that we auction and also merchandise that we sell there at the event, while also holding a spiritual event that I will conduct, and some entertainment that we will, some special entertainment that we'll be announcing next week. Um, we will take those benefits and we will give them to a shelter. After last week's show, I said to Nikki, what if we were to go out to Colorado City and Hilldale, and these people who have been so badly hurt by polygamy, by the LDS, and we made the benefit to help them. These centers are largely run by women who are either formerly wives of polygamists or daughters of polygamists who are trying to help women who were trapped in polygamy, in Mormon polygamy, which is human trafficking. This is the reason why, as much as I am convinced that it is wrong, that people are wrong who believe that Joseph Smith never practiced polygamy, you will never hear me say a degrading or critical word about people like Karen Hyatt or Michelle Stone or any of these so-called monogamy affirmers, polygamy deniers, whatever you want to call it. Because even though I think their historiography is wrong, and very clearly so, what they are right about is they clearly don't want Mormon polygamy associated with Joseph Smith because they love Joseph Smith. That's misplaced, but at least that means that we have Mormons today who understand that Mormon polygamy was human trafficking. Mormon polygamy is human trafficking, and it has to stop. And if we can build bridges with people who believe Joseph Smith is a prophet of God, whatever, as long as we can agree on this, Mormon polygamy is human trafficking. And furthermore, it's sex trafficking. And while Tim Ballard went around the world with Operation Underground Railroad, selling them his sound of freedom and taking unbelievable amounts of money that he wound up spending on himself and his sexcapades and his and giving away to organizations, law enforcement organizations that are funded by taxpayers anyway and don't need the money, just so that he could claim that every operation done by actual law enforcement was actually his doing, that he had trained them or trained with them. It's been shown again and again. I don't think I have to bring up the old Tim Ballard episodes of Underground to talk about how Tim Ballard did not actually run any operations with these law enforcement agencies. He's full of shit, obviously. He wanted to claim that he had rescued thousands of children when the women who had worked as his operatives, many of them the ones who had been used and sexually exploited by Tim Ballard, according to their claims, were the very ones to come forward to say, in the end, we discovered that we had not actually at any point in time rescued one child from trafficking. That's Operation Underground Railroad. While that scam was going on, and then Angel Studios worked with filmmakers who were originally from other projects under a different name, and released a whole film lionizing Tim Ballard as this great rescuer who rescued children from trafficking. It turns out he not only didn't rescue children from trafficking, he actually abused women. He actually abused children by using their story in their name, and he abused law enforcement by getting law enforcement agencies names attached to him and using the work of people who actually know how to do law enforcement, using their good name to try and bolster his own reputation. And it was all a grift from the beginning to the end. That's why I said we have a situation here with Nick Shirley where they have their new Tim Ballard. And it is obvious to anybody who does even a little bit of digging. This has nothing to do with government fraud. There's not one penny of fraud that has been recovered or exposed by Nick Shirley or David Hoke or Lisa DeMuth, at least as far as I can see. And if I am wrong, I'm happy to have somebody point out how I am wrong. So far, what we have shown is they show up a day late and a penny short with evidence they either fabricated or that is meant or that is already months old in cases that have either already been settled or are already under investigation, and are using it now to sell Americans all over the country and all over the world to try and hurt children all over the country. And it's disgusting. It has to stop. This grift has to end. And when it comes to autistic children, autism, as far as anybody knows, we still don't fully understand what causes autism. Believe you me, as an autistic man, if I could find out, I would. But we can see that it is hereditary, that there is something genetic, some genetic component and factor, and that is why people like me have children who have autism. I have autism, my children have autism. And once upon a time, it wasn't recognized. But now it is. Now we can see the traits. Now we can have diagnoses that are better. Ever since we ditched Asperger's syndrome, which was a condition named after a man who, by orders of Hitler, developed a system for systematically deciding which autistic children should be allowed to live because they could be conditioned to be German enough. We see this again and again. It happens again and again. I made a TikTok about a year ago when this whole when this huckster, this absolute charlatan, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. went out and sold the president of the United States and tried to sell the public on that Tylenol was what they had proven that Tylenol caused autism, which again is not true. I said, you wait and see. This was last year. I made a video on my TikTok. It's still up there that I showed the hospital in Austria where they sent children with autism from Czechoslovakia and surrounding countries under German occupation. And they sent children who were autistic, children who were differently abled to this facility. And Hans Asperger was one of the people who had the assignment to develop a diagnostic system to determine which children could be spared being sent to this hospital. Because while their parents had been told that these children had been sent to a special treatment facility that the Fuhrer had installed for them, what actually happened to these children is that they were executed. And their parents were wired with a telegram saying that their children had gotten sick with a typhoid breakout and that their bodies had been cremated and that they would never see their children again. I said, it is a matter of time before they start coming after autistic children. Nick Shirley is now part of that. This is my opinion. This is my personal prediction I am making with absolutely no magical powers. I am an atheist. I have no ability I do not make any ability to see the future. What I see is the past. What I see is history. It is a matter of time. It is a matter of time before they start rounding up these children with autism. And I can tell you this right now, when they come for mine, it's going to be ugly. If they come for mine, it's going to be goddamn ugly. Because I am the meanest, nastiest fucking atheist you've ever seen. and I play nice. When it's about the Church of Korahor in our business, the spiritual practice, I play nice. But I'm a father also. You come from my children, Nick, Shirley, and anybody else, you're going to see another side. Anyways, let's end with something a little more upbeat, shall we? Let's have a little jaunty tune. Oh, and I was going to mention this. I have 2 minutes. I'm going to mention this. Okay. Will ExmoJoe burn all bridges? I'm going to say this, and I want you to see the smile on my face while I'm doing it. Okay. This is for an update for my ex-Mormon crowd. Some of you know that I have mentioned that a certain creator in the ex-Mormon space and I are still friends in spite of the fact that I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding him. A lot of ex-Mormons contacted me after I said that a few times. I said that this creator and I thought was misrepresented. And I still believe that. And also that he made mistakes. And I still believe that. And that he apologized. And I still believe that. And that this creator and I are still friends. And I want you to see, okay, my feelings about this person haven't changed. His feelings about me have. I just want to state it before anybody else finds out, before somebody finds out some other way. I bear this person no ill will. I've never said a word about him. I've never said a word about him to be derogatory or to criticize him. He was nice to me when I was new in the space, and I am still grateful to him for it. But I've been told not to represent myself as his friend to you and to anybody else. So going forward, I just won't talk about it. I will mention also, I made a video a couple weeks back featuring Renee Steelman, who is, I am still convinced, one of the most impressive creators in the ex-Mormon space and a good person. And I am very impressed with her. And I hope to do more work collaboration with her. And I really want to see her podcast develop. And that's She Became Visible. I hope you all will go and check her out if you don't already. The video we made was exposing ex-Mormon, was exposing patriarchy in the ex-Mormon content creator space. And we called some people out. We put some people on blast. And that, I feel, was reflective of a lot of women in the ex-Mormon space, content creator or otherwise, who feel that men, even when they leave the Mormon church, miss the patriarchal control that we had in the church and the status we had in the church. And I'm a part of this. And I was called out. I felt called out because I had to look back and say, okay, how have I been part of this? Have I been part of the problem? And I cannot excuse myself. I feel I have been part of the problem and that I needed to change. And it's part of our spiritual growth. Spiritual is a term that was hijacked to associate with metaphysics, with the idea of ghosts, whether that's ghost gods, ghost angels, and ghosts are us ourselves, our eternal selves, none of which exist, I put to you. And the truth is that spirituality is about personal growth. In my personal growth, I commit to watching myself and making sure that I do more to highlight that I do not deserve any more attention because I am a man, that I do not deserve any kind of authority for my being a man, or for my being cisgender, or for my being heterosexual for the most part, or any such factor associated with my being a man. I have not always been good about that, and I call myself out. And I want to start featuring more the voices of women by passing the mic to them. Thank you, Kate Kelly, for teaching me about this concept. I'm actually embarrassed I didn't even know that phrase until I asked Kate Kelly, who I consider a friend. I hope she considers me a friend. That you pass the mic. And I had asked Kate Kelly once, I said, what exactly does that mean? And she's like, again, Joe, no, somebody else had commented and said, Joe, you could look it up. You could Google it. You don't need to make a woman who is a prominent activist. That was totally fair. I learned valuable lessons that day. And she said, it means that you don't tell her what she can and cannot say. You don't tell her what she is supposed to say, and you don't constrain her on what she can say. You don't introduce her or validate or qualify her on why she is worthy to say it. This is the way I understand it. And she said, you just get the platform that patriarchy gives you, and you literally shut your mouth and let her speak. And I said, I've never heard this term before, and it excites me. And it's the reason why the handful of opportunities I have had to feature women on our show, on our channel, especially with Godless Sermons, when I was asked, what do you want me to talk about? And I said to them each time, I'm happy to support you if you want ideas of what to talk about. But frankly, I want you to speak from the heart. I am asking you to lend your voice to us, and I pass you the mic to do what you feel is right. If it doesn't preach about God's and it features what you feel is right, I hope and I thank you for sharing it with us. And I'm very proud that every one of those women did a fantastic job, gave me a godless sermon I needed to hear. I expect to do a lot of that in the future, as long as the Church of Korihor exists. And for the rest of my life, long after the Church of Korihor moves into whatever it is next. Let's have a closing hymn that's a little more upbeat. I was thinking maybe we could do A Child Is Not Guilty. I'm going to try, and I definitely am going to have a Godless Sermon on Sunday. I'm going to try and get a little more content out to you while I am up in Utah County, but I am going to be doing a lot of work delivering blankets. And also, I'm going to be doing some work. I'm going to be spending some time with my kids. So if I don't make it by Friday or Saturday, I hope you guys will all join us for Godless Sermon on Sunday. I love your faces. And don't forget the words of my man, Korihor. A child is not guilty.
Child is not guilty for laughing too loud, making mistakes, or chasing a cloud. Let children speak. Listen, you will find their laughter wonder, potential undefined. Let them run, let them laugh and grow. Sing the song that only their hearts know. A child is not guilty, born to be free. Don't blame them because of you or me. Let them dance, let them shout, they illuminate the way. A child is not guilty, give them room to play. Korihor's wisdom, we're born of the sky. The children in us look up to ask why. Remember innocence, you will see their joyful voices echoing you and me. Let them run wild like the river's course, free of gods, of sin, of our remorse. A child is not guilty, born to be free. Don't blame them because of you or me. Let them dance, let them shout, they illuminate the way. A child is not guilty, give them room to play. We are all born immature, flawed in each other's minds. We all judge and are judged all of our childish lives. Let this voice speak, all judgments melt. The wondrous child within yourself. A child is not guilty, born to be free. Don't blame them because of you or me. Let them dance, let them shout, they illuminate the way. A child is not guilty, give them room to play.